When you think about the villains of Ninjago, you tend to lean towards more of the iconic ones, such as Garmadon, the Overlord, Pythor, Moro. Those are the villains you tend to think of. But honestly, there are so many more villains within the show that deserve more of a light. And one of those villains for me has always been Iron Baron from Season 9, because he's not a villain that stands up to the likes of Garmadon or the Overlord. He hasn't got this immense power, he hasn't got these profound abilities. He's a villain just simply because he's evil. And not only is he evil, he is potentially one of the most twisted villains that we've ever seen within Ninjago. So I want to shine a bit of light today on the Iron Baron, because he is one of my favourite villains within the show for a very particular reason, and I would like to know if he is the same for any of you as well. So sit back, relax, and let's talk about the Iron Baron, Ninjago's most twisted villain. To truly establish why Iron Baron is the villain that I am claiming him to be, you have to look at who he is as a character. The thing is that he is of course a villain, and he is more of a pure villain or pure evil archetype. He's not exactly an anti-hero by any stretch, he is just simply an agent of chaos. He is just a force of nature that is a complete net negative for the realm that he sits in. Whilst I can make this claim, and I do wholeheartedly believe it is the correct claim, I do need to explain what does make a villain to really make a compelling case. Now in my opinion, there are multiple different elements that do go into what makes a villain who he truly is. A motivation, a goal, their beliefs, their connection to the people around them, how they just simply act when it comes to other people, like their charisma, if they're a ruthless person, what their flaws are, and if in any way they're actually relatable. There are so many different things that go into a villain, and I truly do believe the Iron Baron accomplishes all of them, and in a very unique way at that. To go in order of the list that I did present to you, to begin with is his motivation. Ultimately speaking, Iron Baron just simply required power, but not in the sense of taking over Ninjago or taking over the First Realm. He just simply wanted power amongst his own tribe of people. Which in a way is almost worse, because he did this to an extent that honestly is just extremely twisted for a villain. The thing is that he completely ruled over them with fear, with worry of what could potentially happen if he wasn't there. He completely ruled over them by sheer manipulation. It's confirmed by faith. The thing is though, is that this type of manipulation is honestly kind of different to what we see with a lot of other villains. Garmadon, for example, he wanted to rule with an iron fist and take over Ninjago, of course, but he was kind of honest about it at the very least, whereas Iron Baron is just deceitful to the bitter end. A craving for power is not unique by any account, but it's just what makes it fascinating to me. It is just the fact that he didn't do it for any broader intention. It's not for any sort of grand purpose. It is just quite literally he wanted to control the few people that he had control of. And that is just kind of evil incarnate. It's just simply these specific people he just wanted to have a hold of. And honestly, it is really interesting to see. And whilst he does have a rule in hand over all of these people and he has the motivation to do so, the thing is that what is actually the goal when it does come to this? What is he actually pursuing when he does have control over this tribe? And of course it is to hunt down dragons. It is to ultimately take over the dragons and use them at his own personal disposal. But I think above all else, his ultimate goal as well is to control the Firstborn. You gotta remember that the Iron Baron has a very bitter vendetta against Firstborn because it's the reason he lost his arm and his leg. It is just the absolute reason why, and it is the only time where he's ever necessarily been defeated before the ninja came along. I mean, Jet Jack herself actually does say, well, it's the time he lost his pride. So I think he does hold a bitter resentment towards the Firstborn, and I think that is his ultimate goal. It is just the ability to take down the one thing that he never truly had. He wanted to find the dragon armor, he wanted to controller, and he just wanted to do as he pleased. I do think that is really interesting to note, and again, if you harp it back to his original motivation, he would take over Firstborn not to enslave the First Realm, not to enslave other realms, just to continue to be within power. He would call in other dragons with Firstborn and use them to consume them. It is, again, by all account twisted. He's taken over one of the strongest things within the entirety of Ninjago's universe just so he can eat. Again, completely twisted and pure evil. But that weirdly does link you right into the third one, like I said, which was their personal belief that they are right. And the Iron Baron does fully believe that he is correct when he does what he does. He defends himself to Wu on many occasions. He says that he does what he has to do. He says, he keeps them safe regardless of whether or not they really know the truth. He does honestly believe that what he does is morally sound, and I do think that is fairly interesting because whilst villains do typically believe they are right, although some of them do just believe they are masochists for the sake of it, aka Chen, the thing is that Iron Baron genuinely does believe in his cause, and I do think that is a very interesting thing to look at. He completely justifies everything he says and does towards the Dragon Hunters because he maintains the fact that he keeps them alive. The thing is that he does just enough for them so they do stick around. But in reality, that is the opposite of a good thing. But he genuinely does believe that this is correct. If you do look at his actions, there is not a semblance of regret. There's not a semblance of any sort of rejection or any sort of objection to what he does. He just simply does it because he believes it to be the case. And again, it is very interesting to note that because we never really get to see a Ninjago villain that is so unwavering. He is that unwavering in his own beliefs that he doesn't actually comprehend the fact that there are other factors outside of his own personal mindset. He doesn't comprehend the fact that he could be wrong, and it is what ultimately leads to his own downfall. He doesn't actually realize what's truly going to happen to him until the very last moment, until he is literally on the receiving end of Firstborn's might. But he truly didn't think that could have been the case. He thought as soon as he got the dragon armor, he won. That is genuinely his own thought. He doesn't believe there was any other factor outside of it. It's that realization that is the only time where he realized that maybe he couldn't have been right. And that's honestly really interesting to note, because it does go into that whole factor. It's the fact that he doesn't believe that there's no other option than his own mind. Which weirdly does lead into the fourth point that I said, which is ultimately the connection to the hero in the matter, which in this case is the ninja, or more specifically Wu. Him and Wu share a fair few scenes towards the end of the season, and this is where we learn a lot about Iron Baron. The thing is that we do see a connection forming because he is actually starting to be somewhat honest with Wu. He does straight up say what his motivations are, and that's why we know it. And then in a moment where he could have met his own demise before he even got the armor, Wu saved him. And it does establish one very important thing. Iron Baron would not have saved Wu. Wu saved Iron Baron, and it does show the duality when it does come to the characters. And again goes back to this whole point of how twisted he truly is as a person. In the moment where he could have lost his life and he did get saved, he doesn't hold any sort of sympathy, any sort of change of heart, whereas maybe some of the other villains could have. There are some moments within Ninjago where you do note the villains are surprised when the ninja do attempt to help them out. But in the case of him, he just simply goes back exactly to whatever task he was at. He doesn't have any sort of belief that anyone around him can actually be good. It's again showing how twisted of a worldview he has, because he can't comprehend the fact that Wu saved him and just continues to go about his day. It is just so weird to note that he just doesn't possess the part of his brain that allows him to comprehend that information. But honestly, these first four things that I have mentioned are proof enough to me that this character is truly a twisted individual, because all I've talked about so far is lying, deception, belief to the bitter end. He is truly pure evil. But like I said, there are four more things that we can talk about. The first one is just his general charisma, and you may think that as a positive trait. Often charisma is associated as a good thing, but his charisma is associated with just sheerly how dangerous that he is. The first part of that dangerous charisma is just the sheer intimidation aspect he does have amongst his tribe. You can see that there is no deception amongst his ranks until further along when Faith does start to put a lot of discretion in there. The thing is that he very clearly has a chokehold over most of the people who are under his wing. And it does stem from the fact that he just simply knows how to control them. And the other part is that he clearly has an intimidation aspect to him, which is by all account dangerous. And again, it goes back to Faith. We know a lot about how their dynamic works, and then one of the main things is the fact that he forced Faith into hiding who she truly was. He didn't want people to think that his top hunter was a woman. And the thing is that she wholeheartedly went along with it, and she did believe that that should have been the case to an extent, because she had no objection to it. So it is a very clear indication that he has got some charisma to him. He's very charismatic, but like I said, in the very wrong ways. Which again just goes into this twisted nature, because he clearly does have some form of social skill, it's just he uses it to his own advantage, which is very, very interesting to take a look at. The thing is that whilst this would never be the case, Iron Baron didn't need to lie to the Dragon Hunters, and I think that is one of the biggest points about Iron Baron above all else, is the fact that he didn't need to do what he did. He very clearly could have just led his tribe with honest and faithful truth, but the thing is that he just simply never chose to. And that is why he is again very twisted. That is also the explanation as to why he's truly as ruthless as he comes across. Like I said, it's not just about in his physical prowess. The thing is that we don't really get to see Iron Baron fight all that much within the season. He doesn't, because he doesn't need to. It goes into that whole thing of how ruthless he is that the fact is that the Dragon Hunters go on the idea that he could do something to them. Which again, is so twisted. It's run on complete fear, and it's genuinely quite interesting to look at when you do take a dive into it. But all of that does bring us on to the 7th thing that I did mention, which is ultimately the flaws of Iron Baron. And it's a very interesting point to bring up when it does come to a villain, but villains are all inherently flawed, and Iron Baron's is one that I do think is fairly interesting and does go back to the reason why he does believe he's right. His self-belief that he is just physically incapable of being wrong is what led to his ultimate downfall, and that is his flaw, is that he can't see past his own ego. And we also brought up before as well the concept of his pride, and he lost it because of Firstborn. And the thing is that again is what led to his downfall. He couldn't believe that Firstborn was actually of her own free will, and he could take revenge on her just simply by controlling her with the dragon armor. He had no other idea on what he would do outside of that fact, and it was his ultimate goal, I guess in another way, to get his pride back. And I do think that is ultimately very interesting to think about, because if he doesn't see beyond that point and doesn't see beyond his own self-belief, then this was his destiny. There was no other option for him than the demise that he did face, and I do think that is very ironic in the very interesting sense. He lost his pride to Firstborn, lost his arm and his leg to Firstborn, and in a case of revenge and ultimate power, also lost his life to Firstborn. And that is the most fitting case of a twisted villain. And also brings us into the 8th point, relatability. He just wanted his pride back. He wanted a sense of power back. He wanted to be a man in his own eyes. A lot of people remark about how he lost his pride, so he very clearly did want it back. And ultimately he just wanted to survive, which I think is something we can all relate to. But the thing is that whilst you can relate to a villain, and relating to a villain is what makes a good villain, the thing is that it ultimately doesn't remove the point that, like I said, he is the most twisted of the bunch. But on overall, I do think these 8 factors that do go into a villain is honestly what makes Iron Baron such a fascinating one. I think he is honestly one of the best villains we've ever seen within the course of Ninjago. Unfortunately, he does share a season with Garmadon and Harumi, 2 of the most highly regarded villains that we've ever had within the show. But if you don't take them into account, you really do realize we've got something good with Iron Baron. He honestly could have held a whole season on his own, but unfortunately, he was just amongst other good villains. So it does feel like he's oddly overshadowed, but I do hope this video has reflected some light on why he's truly fascinating, and ultimately why I think he is so good. Honestly, I love him as a villain, and I would like to know what you guys think of him as well. Because that's where I'm going to end off this video, and I do hope you enjoyed it. And like I said, I would like to know your opinion on Iron Baron. Do you like him? Do you dislike him? Do you wish he had his own season? Do you wish he ever did return? Obviously he can't, because he got liquefied, but that's kind of beside the point. But other than that, thank you very much for watching, like I said, and I do hope you enjoyed. And if you did, please consider subscribing. I love talking about Ninjago with more people. And if you do want to support the channel any further, which you do not have to, you could become a channel member and join the Legends on screen, and the Eternal Legend Grandmaster Sensei 208 in particular for being the Eternal Legend. Thank you very much, my friend. But like I said, that is about it for today, you guys, and take care. Okay, bye!